we are seeing record growth everywhere in the mystery school. Japan, we've had it's just ridiculous numbers, and Toronto and everywhere. And of course, it is needed, and people can feel that. Now, obviously, the lineage has an agenda, and this is the agenda of saving people from slavery, to bring people into freedom of the spirit and the spiritual world. So this is what we're seeing people flowing to. And of course, we have a system that kind of creates a flower garden instead of a dump. You know, people come to what they like. So, you know, this is all linking together now. So, and we're going to see more growth as times on Earth get harder.
I think a component of this is we present people hope to get out of the way the situation is in the world today. I think when people look at life and we look at this massive accumulation of just knowledge that we have, like online, for example, a lot of people look at that knowledge and they don't see a way out. They go, well, we have all this, we have more knowledge than we've ever had in the history of the world, and yet still trapped in the box. And so much of what's missing is the component of spirit, of who you really are, and the hope and the opportunity that comes from that to actually break outside of all that negative garbage. Yeah. And I think we stand in that understanding that there is a way to get around this, and it won't involve necessarily only traditional methodologies. There is these other components that have to be brought in, and when you put it all together, you basically create a miracle.
We are school that combine all cultures. We are not in particular style of teaching of the West or East. People are ready to receive what's really going on, how we were bound to this physical density. This guy said slavery. So it is, people are needing this, and people are coming to feel freedom and hope.
To expand on what Gudni said, when we talk about slavery, you know, people sometimes get the conception that slavery is like, you know, old school traditional slavery, like a person owns another person, you're maybe in chains, and you know, you're locked up in a barn or something, or whatever it is. You think of those terms, but the slavery today is so obvious and subtle all at the same time. And a big part of human slavery is the fact that, you know, we are often the first master of the slave of ourselves. And part of us being slaves is, well, who's the first person that put me into the chains? And it's like, well, you did, by your beliefs, by the way you're behaving. You walked yourself right into that situation. So a big part of releasing someone from slavery is not in the traditional sense, we got to go and fight this opposing force outside of your life first, and then you won't be a slave. It's actually like, no, the first opposing force is what's inside of you that we have to address to free you.
And of course, on top of that is the system society creates to keep people on minimum wages and you know, taking loans, and you know, it's like, it's just, they're not free.
Yeah.
People are into scarcity, but this planet is plenty. An abundant planet.
Exactly.
We have enough food for everybody, and the monetary system, the fiat currency or any kind of currency, it does not exist in the nature. It is creation of human.
Yeah.
But all the resources, everything what we need is here. That is to everybody to know exactly.
A person can be as much a slave as someone who's told they have no potential to change and grow. That can create slavery. Or a person who's told they can do anything and it's unrequired to do something to get to that anything. You create the slavery in both ends of it. Yeah. The answer is somewhere in between, is to, I mean, legitimately know thyself and then do something about that to get there, to get into that state of knowing thyself, which is the first place you can take your chains off, right?
You know, I had a interesting conversation the other day with just a person from, you know, outside the school, and she was kind of asking me, what is this, like, who am I? I mean, I know who I am. And I said, do you really? So we started talking about this, and after a while, she was like, well, as we're talking, you start making me feel bad, you know? And I said, well, because it's not because you're realizing that it's the truth. You don't know who you are. That therefore you have not made wise choices in your life. But I think a lot of people are slaves of a certain way of thinking. They just don't know these things. They haven't been taught. I mean, what are they taught in school? You know, what does society talk about?
It's this thing of so many people are in a pursuit of happiness, and then, well, okay, sounds good on paper, but don't you kind of have to know who you are and what you really want if you're going to pursue something? Exactly. And so they go running out to chase happiness, but they haven't explored who they are, what they really want, what they really desire. And often when they end up, a lot of people, you know, they might get to the place where they thought that's where happiness was, and then they go, it's not here. You're just chasing an illusion. You call that happiness.
That's actually exactly what this woman said. She went like, well, I thought I was happy in my first marriage. And I said, well, you don't know who you are, and you say to someone, I love you, then that must be a lie, because you don't know who you are.
Exactly.
So you can't say that.
Yeah.
I is an unknown factor.
Yes.
And you can see 60% divorce rate on the planet, the facts are there. You know?
People are trying to live life following your parents or society, and they have come up with this idea of happiness, which has nothing to do with true emotions and true experience. And mystery school here, we give them information and experiences and so many variety of exercise that so you will be breaking free of these conditions.
Yeah. You know, I know in other cultures it's different, but obviously in Western culture people say they love things all the time. They don't really mean the way we would hermetically what love is. You know, oh, I love my milkshake, I love my dog, I love my wife. It's like, equally? Yeah. That's weird. You know, like,
exactly.
Good milkshake is good, but that's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But I've always thought that because sometimes when we talk about love, love can appear to be an obligation that's required of you. Oh, I have a child, I must love my child. That is a requirement to be a parent, so therefore. But so to me, at least in Western culture, love is this interesting force dynamic, but I think like often means more to us because like is optional. And to say I like you actually is a choice I'm making, where sometimes love is a requirement, or at least people perceive it as I must love you, I don't have a choice. But liking you is something I choose to do. So I personally think in the West it's harder in a relationship to look at someone in their face and say I like you. It's almost become tripe in society to say I love you. No, I love you, man, but I don't like you.
Everybody else.
Yeah, and so like in a weird way, it's not the same in other cultures, has taken a higher order than love. And that's part of knowing thyself, that you can actually say that you like people.
Yeah. I like the concept in Avatar, you know, I see you.
Yes.
You know, because that's another problem in society. People don't see each other. I mean, you can ask, actually it was done, I think it was Masters and Johnson, back in the 60s and 70s, they did research on married couples. And, you know, 90% of the men could not say what the color of their wife's eyes was.
Wow.
90%. They just don't see. They didn't see their wives.
Yeah. It obviously didn't happen in Japan. Everybody's brown.
I think this is brown.
I think they're brown.
Pretty well, yeah, I guess so.
Correct, but that's pretty bad. And,
That's true.
And they just don't see the person. The men come into a marriage with the thought of, well, this is how it should be. And then the wife is steeped into this role of, you know, that's how they see each other. And that's not how it should be for them. They need to see each other for what they really are. I was very lucky as a teenager. You know, growing up, my parents were wonderful, absolutely amazing parents. supporting me, everything, you know, no problems with anything. And yet, 16 years old, I was like suffocating at home.
Yeah.
And I left, I went straight to London, I got a cord cutting, you know, but many times I come back to this moment because I loved my parents. There was no problems between us. I still had to leave. And later I was kind of like analyzing this, going, okay, the chemistry is good. And this is the same with relationship, chemistry good, but more is needed. And for me, like 16 years old, I just didn't know who I was. I couldn't build a true relationship with them based on this fake personality.
But isn't that honestly the most normal thing in the world? What 16-year-old should say they know themselves?
Right.
Wait, how could you be at 16 and say, oh, I know exactly who I am?
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, it's like when someone, like in the West, you know, you typically go to school, you know, if you're going to university or college, it's 18. How could you say to someone, you should decide your career potentially for the rest of your life at 18? Based on what knowledge do you have about yourself?
Yeah.
What experiences have you given yourself, have you gone through to say, oh, I know exactly what I want to do and who I am?
It's so difficult to seek mentors in your life. Everybody is so conditioned. And my case, I was lost. I studied in America, and I didn't know who I was.
But you had to flee kind of Tokyo, right? You kind of like Bruce Lee, they had to flee Hong Kong. You had to flee Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
Or kind of.
Kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah. So I decided to become Japanese, meaning who I am, I have no idea. I have to be somebody. I have to be accepted. I have to be successful. So I want to make money. And then being Japanese, meaning I had a Japanese restaurant. I taught karate. But it is not pursuing art of culinary or martial arts. It's about my identity to be accepted. So mystery school is growing because we make people realize who and what they are without being accepted by other people. So the strong mentorship through the history of thousands of years, you know, mystery school will set people free.
And when you know who and what you are, your potential changes. So it's not just who I am today, it's what can I become tomorrow now that I know who I am today.
Those emerge with that.
Yeah, which is, you know, ultimately what we talk about in the mystery school of growth, right? What's that growth? Well, first we got to start with who you are before you can grow into something greater than where you are today. Yeah, for sure. There's kind of a concept, I see it in New Age, where you're perfect the way you are. That's why I wrote the book. That's legitimately why I wrote the book, is because no, you're not, unless you're perfecting. Then you're perfect. You're perfect when you're perfecting, but when you stagnate and say, I've reached perfection, it's like, well, you're done. There's no perfection to be had unless you're growing. So growth and perfection are, you know, so when a person, we see people in these relationships, they suffer, and it's like, because what, to your point about a mentor, what is the outside stimulus? What choice have you made in your life to say, I need someone or something that will inspire me and push me to come beyond my ego and to address my life's questions, to really see who I am? I don't know anybody who can do that without making a choice to say, I seek this to happen. I seek this experience. It generally doesn't fall in people's laps that way. If it occurs to them, they'll, without their free will to say, I want this to happen, they generally just move away from it.
Right.
And so the people in the mystery school come because they voluntarily say, I want this experience. I want to be challenged. I want to be pushed. I want you to show me my shadows. I want you to show me where I'm blind. And of course, all growth is hard, but the other side of it is, what's the reward? You know, and hard doesn't mean it's not worth it. Hard often means it's worth it, right?
I always love this part of our evolution, a part that most of the students never see, or have never seen. But when we were working together and you guys were being trained to take over this, we had a lot of arguments.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
100%.
Yeah, at school, and you called me all kinds of names and everything. And I was loving it because you were responding. A student I talk to doesn't respond to me when I try to, push their buttons. Nothing happens. But this is where the growth is.
Well, it's that dismissal of the opportunity to change.
Right.
Where, to be fair, we took it to mean something,
Yeah.
and therefore that
Exactly.
elicited a response.
Yeah, you moved the right way, and I was having fun. It's like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I wish I could see.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, look at us now, right?
Very true. You get 5 points. Actually, I'll give you 6.
You know, one point it really released me is that I am a spiritual being coming down to this material density to experience, so that I don't need to prove. This is not something that insignificant me try to become perfect. I am already perfect, therefore you got to do things gives you joy, which require discipline, all kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, that is really a breaking point that I could feel good about myself.
But that loans itself to things too, and there's a lot in the New Age movement that all this growth, all this self-mastery, the understanding of spirit, of God, of a universal consciousness, whatever label they want to use, it's supposed to just happen naturally. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Right.
And that to us is just,
Right.
you know, completely inaccurate. There's words I want to use that would be profane, because it's about self-responsibility. If you're not responsible for taking action for your growth, who is supposed to be responsible?
Right.
Right? When you're a little kid, your parents are supposed to have that influence. But when you become an adult, you're supposed to be looking at yourself and saying, I need to grow, I need to change. But to do that, you have to be responsible enough to say, I'm going to have to confront things. And today, people are being taught to run away from confrontation, to just point a finger and say, if you challenge me, you're bad. And it's like the only way to, you know, I was saying in a video recently that when people act like that, all they're looking for is affirmation. And growth often comes from being told, no, you might be wrong. And let's look at why you're wrong. You can't do that. You're breaking me down. It's like, yes. So you can build yourself up the right way. So that you have ultimately inner peace, so that you have contentment and understanding, that you can discern the light and the dark through that state of peace, as opposed to constant chaos in thought and mind and heart, right?
I mean, the mystery school lineage is a path, and it's almost like an obstacle course. And you go through certain obstacles, and your frequency should meet the energy that you're coming into. And often there's conflict. We see that in the Heroes Academy. You know, people are crying, or, you know, I don't want to do this, you know. All of that comes out. And as further down the lineage you go, the path, the obstacles get sometimes harder. But this is what it is. This is what's, you know, polishing the diamond.
Yeah. But if you're not worth it, who is in your life?
Right.
You know, not to make it sound selfish, but it's your life. And if it's not, if your life isn't valuable enough for you to actually do work on yourself, well, I don't know what you want out of life. I really don't.
Exactly.
And that's why we say the most important thing in life is to know thyself. You say, well, how could anything else be more important? Because you can affect society through that process. It's not like it's limited or isolated from influence in the world. Knowing thyself often means you can actually do more good in the world, not less. And you don't have to be in a state of perfection, which we all see sometimes as students, right? Well, I'm going to start helping when I'm perfect.
Yeah.
When I've solved all my problems. It's like, well, then you're never going to do anything, right? You have to work from the imperfect state with an understanding that you're going to keep doing better, right? You know, you don't have all the answers, and it's okay. Just keep doing it.
Little bit different point. Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky, she, you know, traveled to India. And she was asked once, what are you doing in India? You know, she was a big woman, had hard time breathing, and India hot, and, you know, bad food and water back then, 120 years ago, 140 years ago. And she said, I'm looking for the keys for the salvation of the human race. But the keys to the salvation of the human race are not going to be found in India when it comes to, if we're looking at the issues of society. You know, the issues of society, each society has different issues. We have different issues in Japan and Canada or US and UK, etc. She's talking about a much higher perspective. And the perspective we have in the lineage is that we are eternal beings. which means we're gods. We have never been born, we can never die. This is the perspective we're coming from. This is that spiritual teaching. So the lineage is not going to come down and solve the issues of society to create, a free society. We want people to remember who they are. I am God, and therefore these issues have nothing to do with me. So that's where the magic comes in. It elevates us to a much higher level, and we just don't care about these things. I was lucky when I was young to see these things. I could see. So I never entered the, what do you call it, the rat game?
Rat race.
Rat race, yeah, the rat race. So, and I could see these, the cards are how do you say, the cards are stacked against you.
Yes.
But of course, people have to walk a path. This doesn't happen overnight. Yeah.
So there is a high spiritual realm and this physical human created society. Yes, there is a difference. But either way, if you're a highly evolved spiritual person or you just work in a human society, they have world view. They have a value system built in it. And that is creating certain situation in society. Now, we have magic that is fair and gives you a freedom. That can be applied if we teach metaphysics and alchemy and magic and put it into the practical application. How we can use what we've been teaching. So it will create ideal society when you adapt this idea into practical solving problems.
Yeah. I would say that behaving and thinking in a mediocre way builds a mediocre life.
Yeah.
If the only lessons you take from life come from simply other people only and their version of the way things should be, then all you will build is something that's already been built before. Right. You will replicate nothing new, nothing different. And magic says, well, what happens if things were a higher potential than any of that? So, we have our definition of magic that we use, changing something from nothing and something else to something else sort of thing. And sometimes I say, but magic can also be that which causes change that your mind refuses to accept. And I think a part of what withholds us, in fact, 100% withholds us from using that magic is our mind. Because magic is in opposition to the mind. It's quite ridiculous to the mind to think of magic. And so, to Gudni's point about, living down in the mundane world, I would say that's another way to put it, don't live in the world of the mind. To apply magic, you have to live in a world of magic to use magic. You can't be down in the mind. If you're in the mind, you're not going to have very influential magic. And so much of Mystery School is about, hey, we accept that this mind is a force, but we want to limit its influence. Let's move up to a higher perspective on how we can live. And if we live from up there, then the stuff of the mind is less bothersome.
So the first thing we teach in our first program is I am God. So I say I am God, which means I am a royal being. That's why we see mediocrity taking over on this planet right now.
Yeah.
It's killing, it's fighting against this I am God royalty program.
Yeah.
That's what the main thing we're doing in the mystery school.
And so much of the negativity is given a wide open door by the concept that I don't care and it doesn't matter.
Right.
These concepts, I don't care, it doesn't matter. You're like, well,
so bad.
You destroy everything then,
That's really bad.
And one thing I've noticed, and we're all parents. When you have a child, you get this perspective of what are you going to leave behind? What am I doing? What's being left behind? And so you sit there and you go, what parent wants their child to grow up to be lesser than them?
Right.
Every good parent wants their child to be better than what they were and do better than them. And so a part of understanding that, unless you want your child to be stuck in a world of this mediocrity, of this slavery, you need to introduce the concept that you can become greater and that you can break through this field of the mind. And a huge part of that is accessing that magic. Yep. And not coming from the mind, but coming from the potential that's outside of that.
So this story always, it's amazing. So anthropologist finds a Bronze Age tribe hidden in the forest somewhere in Africa, called the Dogon tribe. And long story short, they found that they kept the secret of Sirius, the planetary system, and they wrote books about it and everything. Anyway, in the tales from the anthropologist, the Dogon asked them, there's a group of them, he said, where did you come from? And they said, well, we came in vehicles. Show us the vehicle. So they go, and there was a river and a bench, and there was these Land Rovers or Toyota or whatever it was, Land Cruisers. And they said, we came in those. They couldn't see the vehicles because their brain had not been programmed for this. Mm-hmm. So they had to cross the river, go up there, and touch them.
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine how much, that's like taking nothing to something magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, boom, oh wow, his vehicles. So this is how, if you adapt this to society today, what are people seeing? Or what are they not seeing?
Yeah, the one thing I want to bring up is the fact, cult culture, not as a point of attack that they're coming at, but just to sort of make a point that it's hanging there with the third order, that number one, we're aware that someone could say that, and number two, what is it they're making a mistake about, right? And it's like, well, we're a culture, we're not a cult. And that's what bothers people, that we're a culture. The one axiom of a cult is it has to have a singular leader to which everyone worships. We don't have that, so we can't be a cult.
I thought you were the one.
I would be the worst cult leader on earth, because I'm like, everyone leave me alone. Go away. I don't want you near me.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. We're not a cult, we're a culture.
We're a culture, and that's what bothers people, is like they don't believe there's a culture that can be focused on growth and love and kindness and challenging each other to do better, and it's not all wishy-washy, and it's like, well, if you're not wishy-washy, you're a culture, you're a cult. No. Because some people could argue, well, the army's a cult because they're tough.
Right.
It's like, well, being tough doesn't make you a cult. We all know that there are times that people have picked up bricks and stones and say, you guys are a cult, and even though internally we kind of laugh at that, well, externally we laugh at it too, because that accusation clearly does not, no one would make that if you're inside the organization or knew us personally. It'd be like, no, kind of the opposite. But, and I think there's a misunderstanding, because People accuse organizations that pursue spirituality. If it's not a religion, it must be a cult. That's the end result. It's a cult. There's no other way to do it. If there's a structure required to pursue that spiritual understanding, and it's not in a religion, it's a cult. And of course, that's very small-minded thinking, that's not critical thinking, that's not investigative, that's that mere opinion we talk about. Just gonna throw an opinion out, not study anything. Because clearly once you look inside of us, we are not a cult, but we are a culture. We do have, guidelines, policies, rules of behavior, rules of engagement, but that's the only way a person can grow. Right? You can't come, if you wanted us to help you and you came in and you said, you can't challenge me. You can't ask me to step out and be a better human being. You can't reflect back my negativities. You can't challenge my beliefs. So why are you here? Just go stand in the mirror and talk to yourself, because that's what you want, right? So it's this misalignment on people who don't understand that the way we help people is through this system of doing it. And yes, we can be tough. We can bring tough love to the table. We can also be the most compassionate people you ever met. But all of that doesn't equate to a cult. It equates to a culture, that you come into this organization and we say, we accept all, we love all, but there are going to be ways we're going to help you grow, and you're going to have to voluntarily go through that process.
Yeah, I mean, we have been called a cult, and to me it's a very interesting concept, this cult. Because first of all, we come from the evolution of mystery school has been through, secret societies that maybe we could say that they were cults, but again, the definition, like you were saying earlier, the definition of cult is that there's a one leader that everybody follows, and that's not been the case. All these secret societies have had a huge administration and many teachers and all that. So it's been a school running for at least 8,000 years, and they were all called orders, hermetic order, or others would call them secret society. They didn't call themselves secret society.
Yeah.
Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, for example. So we are an order in that sense, and I don't know. I don't understand when they say we're a cult. Because is it the order? Because an order has an order. There's an order to things. We do things in a certain order, and there's just again the path. So is that why they call us a cult? It's really puzzling to me, because we don't meet the criteria according to Britannica. Yeah, we're definitely a culture. Our culture of service to humanity.
Yes.
That's how we in the lineage have learned to grow. It's been like that for thousands of years.
Where I come from, again, I wanted to be Oriental person. I wanted to be Japanese person. So I didn't know who I am. So I heavily studied esoteric Buddhism. Now I come into Gudni's class, and he was teaching me life activation. And that was a stick with a crystal and
stick in a rock.
Right. It will bring your potential to highest level. I told him, you gotta be kidding. You're charging all this money and claim this is happening, you're a cult. I didn't know if I said that, but I meant that. He said, he was laughing. You don't want to believe anything. I was handed down this tool from lineage, and now I'm handing down to you. You gotta try to see if it works yourself. You judging without using it just don't happen. And I said that is true. So I used it, and it created changes to people and my environment and how I see myself. I quit being Japanese or Asian or anything. I am a citizen of this earth. And the other side of it, wonderful. Our lineage offer for thousands of years. We do not welcome believing something. Believing your leader or school or whatsoever, that is create cult conditions.
Right.
We are, through the history, the command and demand understanding of what we teach. So things, we have to try it to see if it works. It is called alchemy. And the other side of the situation is metaphysics. You think and you need to understand, not to believe. So we cannot be a cult because of this. Do it to find out and understand what we are talking about, if it's work for you, your own discernment.
It does, give you a perspective on where the world's at. And if I let myself be sad about it, I could be, because you look and you say there's so little belief that there's a potential of an organization like ours who really is imperfect and doing the best that it can, but to help the world, that no one could believe that there's that good intent there. They just can't believe that's possible. They've been burned so many times by so many people, by so many organizations, and they say, well, no, it all has to be evil intent. And you're like, actually, there's a bunch of good people in the world doing good things. Just open your eyes. Yeah. But the concept that you can grow or know the things that we offer by yourself, my answer would be, then do it. Then do it. I couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. We all required a teacher. We all required the challenge. We all required the path. But if your argument is, well, I don't think you need a path, well, then don't. It's fine by me. I mean, I wish you all the best, and I hope you make it. I hope it all works for you. It didn't work for me. And you look at, I know that a lot of the animosity that builds up in people is the joy they see in the students. It's like, how dare you be happy? Right? Or don't you realize you shouldn't be happy? And it's like, but they're joyful and happy. The concept is that they must all be tricked. You're like, how do you trick people into being in a joyful state? And if you can do that, you should keep doing it because you're making the world better.
I know, and there's the proof of another magic that we flow, and that's the difference between happiness and joy. Happiness, I am happy, I'm going to Disneyland or something, it's temporary. Joy is an eternal state.
Yes.
And with service to humanity and the rewards we get from that, the spiritual reward, we feel joy all the time. And people just don't like that, you know?
Well, they also get, I see a lot of, again, it's kind of the new age thinking that if you're enlightened, you're this concept of a Jesus and a Buddha combined. Nothing bothers you. You just walk through life like, everything's perfect. It's like, in a state of enlightenment, you can still experience negative emotions. They just don't have the emanation the same way. They don't have the permanence. And your desire to correct them or adjust them, to take what you need from them and move on, is much higher in a state of enlightenment than it is without it.
Right.
Where so many people experience a negative emotion and then use another negative emotion to anchor that, so that they stay in that state of that cycle of negativity where, we can experience a negative emotion and go, okay, well, what do I need from this? What don't I need? Okay, time to move on. Serves, doesn't serve. Yeah. And so you can be an enlightened and still have things happen, but it's just how you address them is so different. And how long they last, how they affect your emotions and mentality is just not the same.
Yeah, there was a teacher in the school in England, older man. He said this in one of the classes, and I kind of didn't really listen, right? And he says, if you want to maintain a state of joy, you have to throw out the truth, the attachment. But later on, I had to ask him again about it, and again and again. And I started realizing, this is the key. So if we are holding on to something, this is the truth.
Yeah. And I think that's where sometimes, to break off a little bit, but that's where sometimes people misunderstand you, G. Because sometimes when you're teaching stuff, they don't realize how many levels you're talking about it and what you're actually saying to them. And of course, for people in the outside world, they want to take what you're saying and contextualize it through the mind. And therefore, what you said is exactly the way it is. And it's like, not really. You're giving one-dimensional potentiality of a thing that maybe you need to understand or even challenge yourself with so that you could see the greater picture.
Right.
And they keep trying to take like your words and make it the picture. And it's like, he's talking about the color red. He's not talking about the painting.
Right.
The painting is your painting. He's just telling you, here's another version of red you could use. And there's that kind of misunderstanding that you're always exposing other potentials. And so what I would say to a student who can't grasp that, I say, just add what if to the front of whatever is said and take it from there and you'll do fine. What if this is the way it is? What if it worked that way? Exactly. What if this were true? What if that were true? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can lower my guard. Yeah. It's like, we're not telling you what reality is in the way you think a scientist would be. This is reality. We're telling you, but what if your reality is this? What if for you, this is reality?
Take away the absolute. There's no...
Yeah, and just what ifs. Yeah. What if? And every moment is a new what if.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you can grow.
That sounds better. There is no absolute into conditions.
Which is absolutely true.
Right.
100% of the time, absolutely no truth. Wait, what?
But that's you're always saying it, Hideto, that people take the teaching and adapt it to their formula.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem, of course. But then cognitive dissonance comes in. They start getting rid of the old system, new system comes in. So we see that.
And we have wonderful system. We have many tools to alter this, like etheric reconstruction, healing technique, divination things, you know. These things are very effective too, because they just keep thinking and to interpret in their own means will stagnate, because they want to keep whatever they are hold on to. They almost like resistant to teach. I mean, change.
Yeah.
But
They do.
right.
They're scared of.
Yeah. Our tool of the mystery school, life activation, and all kind of things, it really worked.
Yeah. And that point that you're making, like, if you challenge one of their foundational blocks and they realize that that block maybe isn't what it was, it can recontextualize your entire life. And a lot of people are afraid of that.
Yes.
I have to look at everything I've just done in my life.
Right.
I might have been wrong.
Yeah.
And that, it's freeing, but then you have to ask yourself,
Oh yeah.
do you prefer the freedom or do you prefer the sort of fake security
Right.
of the lie you've told yourself that holds you together?
Red or blue pill.
Yeah, exactly.
Obvious.
And that's the hardest part of the challenge is people walking in and saying, and I see it all the time, I want to know more, and I want the world to be a better place, but I don't want to change.
Right.
I want my knowledge as I understand it to remain intact, but everything around me to change. Please take care of that. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, we need to start inside of you first. And you have to be, that's where we were talking earlier, but you have to have the will to want that. Yeah.
The only permanent thing on this planet is
Impermanent. Absolutely 100% of the truth most of the time.
It's
Exactly. But you see, that the thing is, back then, esotericism was a name for all of this: metaphysics, hermetics, alchemy, Kabbalah. It was just this, and that's not actually what esoterics is like in the mystery school. Is we teach, example, ritual mastery, ritual master program, and you're learning tools and rituals, and the rituals are the esoteric part of this path. So is it putting things in practice? So
The word esoteric is the opposite of exoteric.
yeah,
Exoteric is for regular people. Esoteric is for initiate only. It's higher teaching. It's kept secret for many, many years. Yeah, the definition of esoteric and exoteric is pair.
in the most ancient, they taught that the esoteric was the answers you would get within, and the exoteric were the answers that society had.
Ah.
So that was the difference.
No.
But that the esoteric study was always a part of a hermetic lineage.
And I would say for hermetics, if we looked at it in simpler terms, what are the key wisdoms of life? What are the things that make life work and allow you to understand the universe and to move forward in an understanding of something? Hermetics is that which is contained in the mind of God that is uncorruptible by a
Right.
human state.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Pure.
when something is so pure that it's hermetic, it doesn't matter if you agree with it or disagree with it. It doesn't matter what your opinion is. It doesn't matter if you prefer it another way. It is what it is, and it is solidified in its ability to be this thing. It is understanding God's mind without human pollution, basically. A simple way to look at it is it is always good, for God is always good. It is always correct. It is always of value and will help all people and excludes none. And you're like, well, it's pretty much hermetic at that point because it's always benefiting. And anything that can be taken and turned to harm is not a hermetic thing.
Right.
Because God cannot be used to harm anyone. A human has to corrupt something, and then it's not hermetic anymore.
But when you start digging into these like all this mind, it's like it's so simple. And society today, in the world today, makes everything so complicated. I'm an old fart, so I have a cell phone, but my cell phone is a cell phone. I don't watch movies on it. I hardly ever go on the internet function. And just a few years ago, I learned how to text message. But a phone, for me, phone is just this is a phone, so I can call people.
I remember sitting on a couch in Tokyo and saying to you, you were asking me to do something. I said, oh yeah, I'll just text them. And you're like, well, I don't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't do that? No, I don't know. I don't do. It's like that was for like these kids. The kids today, they text stuff. And I'm like, it's actually really easy. Go like that and send.
Put me out like, okay, send. That was about all I did, you know. But, you know, it's not, of course it's fine to use your phone for anything and utilize technology. I love that. I love technology, but, you know, our lineage is from a much simpler mind, in a simpler way. And breaking things down into a more simple way does give you inner peace, and that's where Shambhala comes from. Utopia of peace and harmony comes from inside, you know, from our inner peace. So our tools, and you know, of course we are a Hermetic tradition. These pure tools create a path that is very clear, simple, and makes life easier. So that inside you just have this feeling of inner peace and joy.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you said there, because you know, it's so true. Hermetics creates huge clarity, which then simplifies life.
Yeah.
But a simplified life doesn't mean lesser opportunity. There's actually greater potential in the simplification of understanding it through Hermetics. It's like, oh my God, I can do so many other things. All these potentials sit within me. So, as you know, it's the human mind that creates the massive complication that often Hermetics just cuts through and gets right to the core, and you go, and how many times do we tell a student, I'm not teaching you anything, you remember, you already know this.
Yeah.
And then when you say it to them, they sit there and they say, oh, I knew that.
Yeah.
But why wasn't I using it? Why wasn't I thinking about it? Why wasn't I operating from that place?
Yeah.
Right?
And then in comes Kabbalah. And in the Kabbalah are the specific tools aimed at eliminating your subconsciousness, simplifying your mind, categorizing everything into this system of 10 or 32, and boom.
Yeah.
Now you're living life. Now your awareness is just you're perceiving things you couldn't dream of.
You know, like esoterics, often people have an image of the Asian or Oriental practices, like toning and chanting, and right? These things are really valid technique. But if you pursue that on that path only without Hermetic, you are in a very big trouble, because you start becoming religious. You know,
Right.
if you do toning, then it will change anything. It will not gonna change anything. You're having a problem, and then toning. You have one more problem to the situation, actually.
Yeah.
So what's important is, yes, our potential is unlimited. There is many different vibrations, you know, and esoteric teaching is bring down this density into our physical existence. If we have Hermetic mind and do this esoteric teaching and technique, you will create magic. Even Shambhala, world peace. I mean, looking at the world situation, there is a conflict and war more than ever.
Yeah.
Humans are bad shape. So what simplified, correct thinking mind of God, which is good, never hurt or anybody. You know, this is a Hermetic principle, because it doesn't change with what other people or human think. It is what it is. And then you do this esoteric technique to bring down this vast, clean energy, and combine with esoteric and the Hermetic, we will create miracle.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one of the hardest things to do is to have that understanding and yet continue to have enough influence in the physical world to improve the state. Because many people, for example, to get a lot of things that we would offer as a potential within yourself, you'd have to become a nun or a monk.
Right.
But then you can't influence the world in any way. You can't make things necessarily better for others around you, because your way of doing it is to step away from the world.
Yeah.
And what's so different for us, and what makes our job ultimately as the third order and also teachers harder, is that we have people, we say, continue to engage in life. Family matters, friendships matter, what you do as a living matters, but elevate those states of things to a higher potential. And that's not easy to do while also having to potentially confront what could be just mundane things, like I have to pay my mortgage, I got a car payment, and there was construction on the road, and this guy flipped me off, and all of these things that happen to people every day. You're like, can you be in this higher state and deal with this? And the answer is yes, kind of in a way, but you can't go this way up. You have to be here and influence down here. No. You have to be up here to make the influence down here so that you can see with clarity what needs to be elevated into a better condition. Or as I tell our students, everywhere you go, try and leave that place better than when you came. Right. You made it a better thing for people to be in or be involved with.
The interesting, like you were saying, esotericism was seen for a long time as something from the Orient. Mm-hmm. And there was, Madame Blavatsky and Ledbetter and Annie Besant studying in India, coming back to England, realizing they already had those things. They had esotericism in England.
But on the other side, Hermetic is a Western tradition. I don't think so. No. What is a hermetically sealed means cannot be altered by anybody. It exists neither or, both, or whatever. No. Western or East and West concept is irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. It's universal teaching.
Right.
All of these tools, we're talking about a lineage, we're in a lineage 8,000, at least 8,000 years old. The shamanic path is further back, etc. And then we have all the way to the Sumerians' teachings within the ritual master path. And so all of these things, things are pre-religion. We didn't have any religions back then. I mean, paganism, but it wasn't seen as a religion. All the religions have emerged from this lineage we have. Hermetic, esoterics, etc. That's where the religions came from.
See, like toning or meditating is an essential part, especially meditation. No one did not meditate who practiced any spirituality. Reason why you do toning and sutra and mantra and you do yoga asana is to deal with issues and problem on this physical density. So you do this esoteric technique or esoteric practice, but you must deal with mundane thing to make it better. Because there is a priest class there in India called caste classes. The highest one is a Brahmin, who is a priest class. They just pray and do the ritual only. Right. Next is Kshatriya, which is a warrior clan, and merchant and slave class. So it doesn't work that way anymore. We have to be our own priest. We needs to be our own warrior. We have to be our nation. Everything you do yourself. So the danger of doing so-called esoteric program or yoga or sutra is to do that will change physical density without any challenge. That is a fault. That will create folk religion. Yeah. Oh, I pray God every day. I do this yoga pose 5 hours, so everything is good. It's very dangerous.
Yeah. That's those making things absolute. This is absolute. This is the key.
If someone were to say, what's the biggest flaw in religion? Because you're not talking about a religion, but in general religion, I would say that it's the fact that most religions require you to go to a place and to do something else to actually worship what you call God. Where in the traditions of the mystery school, every day and every moment of life, you as God should be worshiping thyself, which means everywhere you go is the church, is the temple. I have the answer, and here it is, bang. Every time I have the answer, bang. And it's like, I don't think so. I don't think anyone has the one answer to all of Shambhala.
No.
It's a combination of all of us.
But we have these questions: who am I? What am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What is my purpose? And then, of course, the number one question: how do I order the perfect pizza?
Yeah, because it's double cheese.
I've been saying this for 30 years that I've been teaching, and it's not a joke because it's all about the pizza. You are creating a life. The pizza is your life, and the right ingredients is the perfect combination, all put on a circle, cut into triangles, served in a square. 3 sacred geometries.
Okay, well, what if this is right, as opposed to that? What if the answer you thought was correct isn't correct? And the only way you can get a person there is by challenging their beliefs. And so we, as particularly ritual master teachers, have to be adaptable into what we're working with, what's in front of us. And that's class to class and moment to moment. And it's a part of what we've taken on as a contract to work with people in this way.
I would say we master button pushing. We need to. But button pushing, don't you get your buttons pushed in university? And any school you go to, any training you go to? I mean, martial arts, we all come from martial arts. Oh my God. So, only way to learn is since they would push our buttons.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, people get their buttons pushed for watching the nightly news now. But the difference with us, we're pushing your buttons in the potential to help you to grow and understand something. And there's a contract that I will do this for you to help you. The outside world does not have that agreement with you. They're just driving on top, and if that happens to affect you, it does. And so I think, to your point, the benefit of being able to push someone's buttons and doing it well and right is a huge aspect of who we are. But if you take that outside without understanding what we're doing, you can falsely conceptualize or falsely present it as something negative. And it's like, no, it's actually a system that's worked for thousands of years, and it's a necessary system to help you understand yourself.
We can see life in general for all humans as I think it was Blake who was talking about the grinding of the diamond, right?
Right.
And we just speed up that process. We speed up you becoming the diamond. And that's the button pushing. Yeah. Your choice. You came to us, so we're not pushing you to be there, but this is how this system works.
You rely on what other people think of you. So that it's easiest way to get around people is say nothing. Look at the Japanese culture. They are so polite, avoiding conflict.
Right.
So you are not getting into anything. You're just keeping the same thing over and over. Now, whoever tell you what it is, even if it causes turmoil and issue coming up, and especially it is valued to point out something different from what you are thinking. This is just button pushing. Otherwise, you will stay in the same way. You will never excel on anything. So whether student likes it or not, I will push buttons because it's a necessary process.
And we talk a lot in the lineage about relationships and how everything is a relationship. And sometimes people, there's all different kinds of relationships, but to me, a person who's truly growing and really embracing sort of a spiritual maturity is when you can look at the person who is your harshest critic, the person that maybe from their perspective, they really don't like you. They might even carry hatred. And hear what they're saying, because that harshest critic gives you the best potential to see if you really are in or out of alignment, if you're wrong or right, because they're not going to give you an inch. They're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt on anything. They're just going to hammer everything they see that they interpret as potentially not good enough. And so a part of that is being able to not agree with them necessarily, but to listen and go, that's maybe something I need to look at because this person is, and so there's an aspect of you need someone who's a bit critical towards you. You need someone, but who loves you in that criticism or in that challenge, and who desires you to become a better human being, not by conforming to what we said, but by conforming to a better, joyful version of yourself. And so there's a lot of, I can't affirm your beliefs, but I can certainly challenge them. You know, you have to affirm your beliefs through direct experience of what you think is so.
Well, my one hope, because I see us, we're here at the, the prophecy, and the prophecy is in full blast right now. And so hard times, we don't have time for personal drama. Get out of your way, get out of your own way to evolve and get to your highest human potential. That's my hope. We try to do this all the time with our students when we need it. The world needs that right now. We need more warriors of light for this battle that is raging right now.
Miracle is always outside of your mind frame. So whoever listens to this, hope and do the things that will require to do the world peace will definitely fulfill prophecy. The world's peace is coming.
For me, I guess the thing that I would hope for the most is that a person can look inside themselves, accept their self-worth, and most importantly, accept the impact they have in the world. And if they can accept that, then maybe they can accept that it is through that impact things can change and get better. They have to accept you do make a difference. And really what you're thinking and saying and doing right now will make the world better or worse.
That's the thing, every human being counts.
They really do. And that lack of self-worth is, that, we call it godlessness, but it's so many levels of that I don't make a difference, I can't make a difference. Nothing I say or do changes anything. And it's like, it doesn't change anything because you don't believe it changes something. But it can make it better. Yeah, it's the propaganda.
Propaganda of evil.
Propaganda of evil. That you are not valuable and what you do won't make things better. And it's like, yes, of course you can.
Every person has a key. Every person has a role. Okay, let's go get pizza.
Pizza! We're done.